Okay, I think we are working. Yes. Oh, it worked. Yay. Okay. I did it. Sorry, people. Hi. Welcome to Comic Beat Insider, the weekly, mostly live stream podcast about all things comics, movies, TV. And this month, the month of May, is Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And we thought it couldn't be a better topic for Comic Beat Insider.
Mhm.
So let's kick things off. I'm Heidi McDonald, editor in chief of The Beat at comicsbeat.com.
And I'm Jimmy Aquino, the producer host of Comic News Insider, the weekly podcast covering comics, TV, film, and pop culture, and your resident Filipino.
I'm Deborah Aoki. I write for Publishers Weekly, and I'm also part of a weekly podcast called Manga Splaining, where we try to explain manga for people who haven't read manga much.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, so it is. It's called a few different things. It's called Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. It's called Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. It all means the same thing. Where the month of May we celebrate Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, and so we thought that we could talk about the plethora of Asian American cartoonists out there, comics out there. About Asian American stories or with Asian American characters or just Asian characters in general, like that. And I'm certain that we all have plenty of to talk about. We probably will have several crossovers too, like we probably all picked the same thing, I'm sure, several times. So, because there's a lot of great ones out there. But yeah, for sure, we could go. I mean, doesn't matter what order. We can all just like we could
Yeah.
mention a cartoonist. We could talk about a book. We could talk about whatever. So yeah.
Well, I wanted to kick it off with one of my favorite Asian American Pacific Islander cartoonist, Deborah Aoki. I mean, Deb,
Yeah.
you've been doing I mean, you're a cartoonist. You're not just a brilliant journalist and
Yeah.
historian. Are you? You drew a web comic, right? Tell us about your history of web drawing comics.
I used to do a weekly comic strip called Bento Box for the newspaper in Hawaii, called the Honolulu Advertiser, and was later merged to Honolulu Star Advertiser. Um, I did stuff for like indie rock magazines in Hawaii. This was kind of predated web comics, so I really didn't do much as far as like publishing it on the web. Um, and nowadays, I do a lot of drawing for business purposes. Like I help businesses come up with strategy by using my cartooning skills. So it's kind of to the point where I'm pretty rusty drawing comics. I end up
I
drawing
find that
very
hard to
sloppy
believe.
ones, you know.
Yeah. So, Deb, was there a cartooning community in Hawaii when you
Oh,
were getting started?
yeah, most definitely. I mean, Stan Sakai is one of our most famous alumni.
Yeah.
Stan grew up in Hawaii, and he continues to. Well, he doesn't live in Hawaii anymore. He was part of. There was a group of cartoonists there, like Dennis Fujitake, who some
Mm.
people might know, Gary Gary Kato. Um, there was a bunch of them where they would all get together and do have like these comic drawing sessions at like a
Nice.
restaurant or something like that,
Like a
and they would
drink and
always
draw.
office.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Excellent. Nice.
And then today, that tradition is carried on by my friend John Murakami. Um, so he's all, and then so there's kind of like a little Hawaiian comic scene. There's
Oh, great.
like they're trying to create like native Hawaiian
Mhm,
heroes and stuff like that.
mhm,
Hawaii being, kind of this center between the Philippines,
mhm,
Japan, Korea, um, as well as North America. So you have all these influences.
mhm.
Mm. Were the comics that you were exposed to, or read as a kid? I mean, was it mostly American comics, or did you read manga growing up? What were you mostly exposed to?
Uh, I'd say it was kind of like half and half, or two-thirds American, one-third Japanese. There were a lot of Japanese bookstores, Japanese language bookstores in Hawaii, as well as Japanese language movies,
Mm.
Japanese language TV shows.
Right.
So, I watched Kamen Rider, Ultraman
Nice.
since
Right.
I was
Yeah.
a kid. So, yeah, I mean, we were surrounded by that. But I read Archie, Richie Rich.
Yeah, those are my first comics, Archie and Richie
Mm,
Rich.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
That's the gateway
Yeah.
drug for a lot of
Yeah,
us.
it
right.
really is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't
So
think I knew Stan Sakai grew up in Hawaii. Wow. Of course, people don't know he's very famous. Of course, Usagi Yojimbo, uh, the samurai rabbit. So yeah,
which
it's
Yeah,
is
you could definitely see the influence, right? Because
yeah.
Stan grew up like a lot of us in Hawaii with samurai movies. Like they were
Mm,
playing in the theater and they
hmm
were on TV, and so a lot of his stories do reference like the Blind Swordsman, Zatoichi,
hmm
Lone Wolf and Cub.
Yeah. Amazing.
yeah,
Amazing.
I mean he's definitely obviously,
Legend.
super
Legend.
yeah, legend.
Yeah.
I was gonna say
Mm,
superstar, but you're right. He's in the legend
Legend.
category
He
now.
definitely
And
is.
he's
Yeah.
Um
such a nice guy.
oh,
I have not met anyone who said
so
anything negative about Stan. He's a wonderful
Yeah.
guy.
so I don't, you know, are there mean and cranky Hawaiians? Because it's just like most of the people I've met from Hawaii, such as yourself, Steve Lealoha, he's
Oh,
also from,
Steve's a gem.
yeah, Steve is probably perhaps the nicest human being I've ever met, but he's definitely in the running. But yeah, are there cranky, mean Hawaiians? Not to be, I guess that's a microaggression, so I apologize.
They are, but everything's all good once you have a couple beers and poke you together, right?
Right. Yeah. A
Yeah,
little poi. A little poi.
yeah, yeah. Well, I guess it's,
I think there's cranky mean everybody everywhere. I'm sure.
Plus,
Yeah.
yes, that,
Hawaii's small, right? So like
Mhm.
if you talk stink about other people or you're kind of if you're a shitty person, everybody knows.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
kind of like the comic industry, right? It's
mm,
small enough that if you're
Mhm.
shitty or you're
Yeah.
cranky, everybody knows.
Yeah. For sure. For sure.
yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, so what else? So what else you got, Jimmy? I know. So yeah, what do I know you've been.
I mean, I think the most obvious that we all know is like to name is one of the biggest success stories in Asian American comics is of course Gene Luen Yang,
Oh yes, of
who's
course.
multiple award winning. Just I mean his I mean American Born Chinese is a classic. It's still pretty modern, still pretty new.
Dragon
Yeah, yeah, there
hoops.
you go. Dragon Hoops. His new one, Dragon Hoops, is amazing. Yeah, I love Dragon. I actually interviewed Gene several times, but like about a couple months ago about Dragon Hoops and some of his other works as Superman Smashes the Klan. But yeah, Gene's of course Chinese American, and in American Born Chinese, it's incredible. Like he weaves three tales in, even weaving going back to like an ancient tale of the Monkey King, weaves that into modern tale of a kid, trying to figure out his identity as an American, as a Chinese American, as a Chinese person, what Rudy wants to go in, which a lot of Asian Americans have gone through. And me, especially being a mixed race, being Filipino and white, we definitely deal with that as well. Where we're like, well, I live here, but I'm also have this heritage. You try to sometimes there's loyalties are torn, and that book explores that a lot, and it's an incredible piece of work. His work in general is just, I mean, God, the ones we just mentioned, and it's just
Oh
so
well,
much
also
more.
a little thing called Superman battles the Klan.
Smashes the Clan, yes, yeah,
Yeah,
Smashes the
yeah,
Clan, yeah,
Sessions of the Klan.
yeah,
A book of
And all
his.
the Avatar books he wrote
yeah.
too.
Oh yeah, right. One of the
His
ones.
new Shang-Chi's been doing, and
Hmm.
God, he's been
He's the
chatting with
go-to
several.
guy now, man.
Yeah, yeah,
I
for
mean,
sure.
it was kind of hard to believe that, like what you see in Dragon Hoops, that he was a teacher
Yeah.
for quite a while of his career,
So
and that moment in Dragon Hoops when he decides he's going to take the leap and leave
Mhm.
teaching to just write comics full time, and I think it looks like that has really paid off
I
for him.
I
Yeah.
think it really has. But I mean, Gene
Yeah.
is someone who started out in comics just, as kind of the guy from the Bay Area who did mini comics. I
Right.
mean, he was just part of that
Mhm.
scene, I think. And suddenly he's the ambassador for, literature for the
Mhm.
one of my favorite books actually though that he did is The Shadow Hero.
Oh,
Yes.
right,
Another one
right.
Yeah, the Shadow Hero is great.
which is
Mm.
about his kind of theorizing that this real character that was in comics was drawn by an Asian artist, and he kind
Mhm.
of tells this whole, again, he's so great at layering stories, at
Mhm.
moving through the past and the present, and bringing all these themes together. But he really kind of brought the what we're talking about, the heritage of Asian American cartoonists into the fore, and just about the struggle to be
Yeah, and the
recognized.
great Sonny Liu did the art on that
Hmm.
Malaysian-born comic
Oh,
illustrator.
Sonny Lou.
Yeah, who
Well,
did the art on
well,
that.
he's not Asian American because
No,
he's Asian.
I said that. I said
Yes,
Malaysian.
yes, yes.
I
I
said
know, I
Malaysian.
know. I
Yes.
wish we could. I wish we could claim him because he,
Yeah,
ah, God, the art of
yeah,
Charlie Chan to Hawk Chai. I mean, that's
yeah,
another
yeah,
masterpiece.
yeah. Really great stuff. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that like I've got just anything like you said, anything. I mean, Boxers and Saints was incredible. It's just like, but if you haven't read American Born Chinese, that's what you need to pick up because
What
that's
did
sort
you
of the book that made him like who he is. Yeah.
did you read that? I mean, Jimmy, you talked about reading that book, and it kind of is really a classic for for dealing with the Asian, as you said, the Asian American experience, being
Mhm.
mixed race, and just the stereotypes that
Yeah.
are foisted upon people. But
Yeah.
I mean, go on. I'm sorry.
No, just saying, yeah, it's like even growing up, I grew up in the South, which, can be heavily
Oh
racist,
wow.
and I grew up in Florida. And while I was in a big Filipino community because there's a naval base there, and of course there's a naval base in the Philippines. My
Mm.
dad was Filipino, was in the Navy for 25 years or something like that. So I grew up with a lot of other Filipinos, but there still was a big city and lots of pockets, not even pockets, like this large swaths of racism everywhere. And I
Oh
remember the
wow.
first time I remember dealing with it was playing soccer where I think I was weirdly was the only Filipino kid playing soccer, and these kids had moved over from England, which I was like, great. Even as a young kid, I loved like Monty Python. I was like, cool, English is the people, and I won't say the name, but like the dad was the coach, he was awesome. The older brother was really nice, but the younger brother would call me the c word, as in the
Mm.
bad, the ch, and like
What?
yeah, it would all the time,
Wow.
and I would get so like one confused because I'm like, but I'm not but I'm Filipino. Wait, what? Like, and
Yeah.
also just, but I knew it hurt me and it also really upset me
Hmm.
to the point. And I was just like, but you're not from here either. It's like, it's like I'm actually from here. That's weird. You're from England. Okay, why are you telling me to go back? Okay, and so yeah, so I mean, you dealt with that a lot. You saw it, even in certain areas as big of a community as we had there. And I remember like down the road, one of my people I grew up with a family that owned a Chinese restaurant, and we were good friends. And I had a couple Korean friends. It wasn't a hugely Asian city, let's just say. It was
Wow.
big. It was mostly Filipino. It was a lot of Filipinos because of the naval base. But yeah, it happens everywhere, and I certainly got it probably lighter than many people because again, being mixed race,
Mm.
people who are more Eastern Asian probably I know got it a lot worse than I did, and I have friends have told me horrible stories and still deal with it to this day. But
Wow.
yeah.
Well, Deb? Did you relate to anything in American Born Chinese when you read it?
Um, I mean, I thought it was really kind of interesting because I remember that when I was because my family is four generations in Hawaii, so we
Mm.
consider ourselves more
Mhm.
local than anything.
Yeah, yeah.
More,
Right.
we consider ourselves local Hawaii residents versus Japanese, like Japanese second,
Hmm.
Hawaii first, kind of
Ah,
like
yeah.
in
Right.
identity, right? Like where your culture comes from, and because I speak not much Japanese. Um, However, I remember uh, when I went to school in Hawaii that there were different waves of immigration. Like in the 80s or so, we got more Korean and more Vietnamese families moving into Hawaii. And so I remember an insult would be FOB,
Hmm.
like fresh off
Mm.
the
Fresh
boat,
off the
right?
boat. Yep.
And
Yeah.
like nowadays, like I'm reading books like by T. Bui and by Tan
Oh,
Pen,
so
and
good.
Yeah.
it gives
Oh.
me a great insight into what it was like to be that other
Hmm.
coming into America at that time. Because I
Yeah.
didn't really have that experience being an immigrant, right? I grew up
Yeah.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
in the
you know,
culture.
I mean,
Same.
just to point out one thing about AAPI month, it's Asian American Pacific Islander month. And technically, I mean, that's what you are. You're a Pacific Islander, I mean, there is, I think that's really important that it's included in there. But, America has these far flung, territories. I mean, I don't even know.
There's
So
Guam, and then there's
Guam,
Yeah.
American Samoa,
yeah.
Yeah.
you know,
So,
just to name a few.
right. And I
Yeah.
mean, if you're from Samoa, you're Samoan. you're Hawaiian. You're Samoan. So,
But I'm
um,
really careful to say I'm not Hawaiian. Like
ah,
Hawaiian
okay,
to me is has Hawaiian blood, like native Hawaiian.
Oh,
Yeah.
So I say I'm from Hawaii.
from
Yeah.
Hawaii. All right.
Yeah, I
Very.
think I agree with that. I see what you're saying. Yeah, because even when I was younger, I'd always say, "Well, I'm American because that's where I was born, but I'm a Filipino descent." But as I've gotten older, I've definitely embraced my, not that I never did, but I definitely embraced it more. Where I'm like, yeah, I identify, and I also feel like I had the world always identified me. And again, as I've gotten older, live in New York, for some reason,
Mm,
everyone thinks I'm Spanish, which annoys me, not because of I don't, not that I appreciate people think I'm Spanish, but like I want them to know that I'm Filipino or Asian of Asian descent. So I always have been very, when I was younger and when I was a young actor, I was always like, oh, well, he's ethnic. We're not sure what, but he's ethnic. So the world sees you as ethnic. They see you as some
right.
sort of ethnicity. So that's what I've always identified with, that side more so probably.
Hmm.
And Filipino, the Philippines has a history of Spanish
Oh,
colonization, right?
300 years. Japan, I think, was there for a while. America, of course, was there. I think Rhode Island ran it for a year. I don't know. Like everybody's taken over the Philippines. And
Well,
our
Yeah.
and our claim to fame is Magellan sailed around the world till he got to the Philippines.
And then he effed
They
around and
killed,
found out.
yeah, and they killed him for it. Yep. That's
well,
right.
we're hoping to have a episode about Filipino comics specifically
Mm,
because
Incredible.
yeah, huge
because
heritage.
it's a huge and so unique. I got introduced to Filipino culture through my friendship with Alfredo Alcala, who is a
Mm,
great Filipino cartoonist. And when
Mm.
I moved to LA, I didn't know anything about the world at all, or I just met Alfredo. I mean, and we would have dinner with him and my friend Phil Ye. Do you know Phil Deb? I think he might be a little before your
Yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
No,
okay. Yeah.
Phil loves Hawaii, so he would come to visit a lot.
Oh, he
ah,
does love
right.
Hawaii. Yes. So, yes, he was always talking about his trips to Hawaii. And anyway, Phil and Alfredo and I would have these dinners, and then we're like, let's write the book about Alfredo. And so I just would go and talk to Alfredo for hours and listen to his stories about growing up in World War II and spying on the
Wow.
Japanese for
Yeah.
the U.S. because he had a photographic memory. So and he
Wow.
Oh my
he had this.
God.
So yeah, he actually would spy because he'd go little kid on a bike. He'd go, then he'd come back and draw it for for the United States.
Wow.
Yeah, and then, but just also he told me about his life growing up, and the food and the
Oh, that's
villages and
great.
everything, and
That's
just
amazing.
he passed away. He's just an amazing, amazing, amazing person. Just so
Yeah.
knowledgeable and brilliant, and an incredible artist. So but he just taught me a lot about Filipino comics.
Mhm.
So, when I like I guess that's one of my minor fields of study is, the comic book world is Filipino artists and their tradition, and
Oh.
it's a great
I mean,
story. And
Filipino comics, right? With a
yeah,
K.
Yeah.
Komiks, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and very much influenced by classical American illustration. I guess the
Mhm.
GIs bought like Saturday Evening Post with them
Yeah.
or something, and they,
Hmm. Hmm.
those
Yeah.
GI.
Yeah.
They didn't just bring spam, I'll tell you
That's
that.
right. Yeah.
No,
That's right.
well,
Which we
anyway.
adapted very well. The Asian culture all over has adapted very well.
Yes. Well, I will talk about another cartoonist of Asian American who's my background, who's Kazu Kibuishi,
Hmm.
right?
Ah,
And
yeah.
he is the author of the Amulet series, but also he edited the Flight anthology way back in the early aughts. And he's just one of these, like, there was just this burst of young cartoonists at that time who were super influenced by animation, by Miyazaki. I think was a huge influence on them. Also Mobius was a huge influence. So Kazu kind of got all these kids together and in this Flight anthology, which was published first at Image Comics, and
Hmm.
there were just a lot of them have gone on to be superstars, like Jen Wang, actually, of
Hmm.
The Prince and the
Uh,
Dressmaker.
so good.
Um, now I'm blanking on all the names. I should have written them down.
Well,
But
wasn't Dice Tsutsui part of
oh
that
yeah,
too?
yeah, Dice. He was in there also. Um, and there is just a ton of people. So, but
It,
and he was
it's
just a
kind of
kid.
adjacent to the
Yes,
giant robot crew.
yes, that's exactly it. And he was just a kid when he was doing this, just a kid in his early 20s. So he really got on the mark on the, he made his mark through this anthology, but then he was signed up to do Amulet for Scholastic back when kids comics were like I've said many times, we'd have these conversations about, do you think kids will read comics? How do we get the kids to read comics? And so hard to believe, but I saw it with my own eyes. So yeah, Kazu was signed up at Scholastic to do this series Amulet, and it's taken a long time. It's 9 volumes. He's still working on the ninth volume, but this is a beloved fantasy series that's about some children. It's kind of the classic. Where one of the parents is kidnapped and they have to go into this enchanted realm to rescue their parents and discover who they are and become heroes. But it's the world building is amazing. The art is incredible, as you can see. I see kids carrying this book around all the time on the streets of New York. Like I'll just see a kid when the new Amulet comes out. There, kids everywhere will be reading it. And it's a huge seller. I mean, they're working on making some movies out of it, and he's
Is the
just
series complete?
no, volume 9, he's still working on. And
Wow.
poor Kazu, he will, every once in a while, he will just tweet like, look, I'm working on it. I'm not gonna rush it. It's coming out when it's coming out. And he's talked a lot. Actually, Kazu goes to TCAF quite a bit. And
He's a George R. R. Martin of comics. Look at
yeah,
that.
he
Like,
is a
I'll get
little
it
bit.
done.
A little bit, and I've been lucky enough to do panels with him and talk to him quite a bit at TCAF, and he's really, really about the world building, the fantasy, which I think is why it's so beloved of kids. Why they reread it over and over, because it just has this depth of the background, and so yeah, he will finish it in great time, and then there will be this beautiful box set of 9 Amulet volumes. But yeah, he's amazing. He's really one of our, he's like Raina at Scholastic, and then Kazu is right there also. So Scholastic's got some pretty good sellers there.
Yeah. Oh God, for sure. Yeah.
Well, Gil Galligan too, who took over Babysitter's Club, is also Thai American, right?
Oh, is she? Oh,
Oh,
I
nice, nice.
that's fantastic.
Well, there's a book I read only recently, and it came out actually pretty recently, 2017, but I only read it earlier this year or last year, and I kept hearing about it because it's a Filipino cartoonist. Duran Duran, Imelda Marcos, and Me by Lorena Mapa.
Yes.
Oh,
Oh
that
my God,
book.
that's a good one.
That's a
Incredible.
good one.
It's such I can't believe it took me this long to read it because I'm like, oh, it's Filipino. I need to read this, and especially when I read, it, I had no idea what it was about, and especially seeing that it deals with people don't know deals with her she has to go back to the Philippines to attend her father's funeral, and all these childhood memories pop up of her growing up there. And it deals with the 1986 People Power Revolution, which was huge for me because why? Corazon Aquino. So, like as a
Oh.
kid, the people were always like, "Are you related?" And sure, it's my aunt. Because she kept telling me, I was like, "Yeah, yeah." I'm in exile. That's what it is. But yeah, it's like it's a famous, of course, political family in the Philippines. If people don't know the history, like Marcos was a dictator, his wife famous Imelda with the shoes, and but his political rival Benigno Aquino was assassinated,
Mm.
and then his wife Corazon picked up the helm and started this amazing movement and became president of the Philippines. Her son became president. Her daughter Chris, I wept openly when I saw her in Crazy Rich Asians. She plays the princess at the end of the wedding scene.
Ah.
I was like, "That's Chris Aquino!" I was like so excited. But yeah, this comic talks about that movement and what it meant to her and all these other things, and just watching her go through these memories, and seeing things that I've never been to the Philippines. I always wanted to go, but just from what friends tell me, and her dealing with like her dad's loss, obviously, it's an incredible tale. And like music, of course, Duran Duran. I was like, she's like my age, and I'm like, I can relate to all of this, So
What's her name
yeah,
again? What's the name of the creator?
Lorena Mappa,
Yes.
Lorina Mappa, Mapa, yeah.
Yeah. I'm
And
going to put a
yeah.
guide to these in the comments
Oh, excellent.
because
Oh,
I
that's great.
find that people uh, do look at that stuff. Just so
Yeah.
to jump back for a minute, I did find the contributors to the first volume of Flight.
Oh,
Ben
nice.
Ben Gal, you know that guy? He's like the
Mhm.
French cartoonist. Bill Mudron, Katia Chen, Chris Applehans, Cleo Chang. She's
Mhm.
another one. She's like so talented.
Mm.
Okay, I'm gonna have to talk all about this guy, Derek Kirk Kim. Okay.
Yeah, Derek Kim.
D-
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
Dylan McConis, Enrico Casarosa, Erica Moen, who does
Oh yeah,
Oh Joy Sex Toy, Hope
yep.
Larson, Jacob McGraw Mickelson, Jake Parker, the guy who does October, Jen Wang, Joel Carroll, Kazu, Kang Lee, Neil Babra, Flip Craven, Rad Seacrest, and Vera Brosgol, another
Vera
like
Scov. I love Vera.
I mean, this was just, and
She's
these were
great.
all unknowns,
Yeah.
all
Mhm.
unknowns. And, Kazu is a great cartoonist, but oh my God, what an editor. So,
Hmm.
all right, Deb, what you got? What you got? Who you got?
I want to give a shout out to Adrian Tomine.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
He was like got his like I remember him from when he was doing like Optic Nerve,
Hmm.
in that indie comics. Um, like it was about the same time as Love and Rockets, so it was kind of like that time with this cult of the genius indie cartoonist.
Hmm.
And it was kind of interesting to watch. He does now. Like New Yorker covers, which are brilliant, but he also does like these stories that are basically, frankly, autobiographical, and they are hilarious because
Hmm.
his other stories like Killing and Dying and stuff like that is very serious and very indie movie vibe, kind of a little dark sometimes. But the books like the was it the Diary of the Long Distance Cartoonist, the loneliness of the long distance
Hmm.
cartoonist, where he basically remembers every single embarrassing thing he's ever done for the last 20 years,
Yeah.
as well as his book tours and stuff like that, and having kids. It's funny. He's very self-deprecating, which maybe is an Asian thing, but it's great.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah, I really like Shortcomings a lot too, and there's somebody great. He had such great work. Such great work.
Oops, sorry. And they also, he's becoming a multimedia star because there's a couple of different films based on his work
Hmm.
in the works. Like in France, they are adapting his story Killing and Dying as a French film called Les Olympiades,
Hmm.
and which Killing and Dying is a short story in that collection, Killing and Dying, about
Mm,
a family of mother, father, and the daughter wants to be a stand-up comedian, and she's kind of awkward at it, and there's a lot of family issues, but then there's kind of a shocking twist in the story, and I love it. It's just
Hmm.
such great storytelling, and so just insightful and beautiful. It's just a beautiful, tender story. But yeah, they're making a movie out of that, and then they're making
Shortcomings also, yeah.
Shortcomings. Yeah, and who
oh,
was it
wow.
who optioned that?
Randall Park with Roadside Attractions.
Yeah,
Randall Park's gonna make his feature directorial debut. Randall Park, of course, a hilarious comedic actor who I love. He's been in everything. He was in Fresh Off the Boat as a dad, and just you see him in everything. That
and
guy's
in the
uh, uh,
MCU
yeah, yeah, oh yeah,
as
yeah.
Shield.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
He
that's
was
right.
in
Yes,
he was in WandaVision. One of the
yeah,
highlights of
that's right.
WandaVision was
Yeah,
getting to
Mhm.
see him. So
always
yeah,
be my
so
maybe. He's great. Yeah, he's great. Love
Wasn't
that
he
guy.
in that really funny Netflix romantic comedy?
Always be my maybe. Yeah.
Yes.
With yeah, that's really fun.
That's a good one.
Yeah, mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, I really love that.
Well, I just mentioned Derek Kirkham, and he's had an interesting career. So he did this book, Same Difference, that came
Mhm.
out way back in the day. That was just really just one of those books. I mean, it's kind of a young adult book, I guess you'd say, just about finding your place in the world and awkwardness and problems with dating. And it just knocked us all on our ass. I got to be honest. It won like all the awards, the Eisner, the
Yeah.
Ignatz, everything. And he did a bunch of books actually with Gene Yang. They
Yeah, Roy
collaborated
Jean, yeah.
on this book, The Eternal Smile, which
Mhm.
it was good. I would say
I like the Eternal
it's
Smile.
it's
Yeah,
it's great.
yeah.
I mean, they're it's I would say they're both great creators. So it's
Mhm.
probably one of the books where you're like, oh wow, they worked on this together. That's cool. But then he did his own book too, and it's funny because I think the expectations for Derek were so high after his debut, and then he did a book for the Minx line at um, at DC Comics. Good as Lily, And he doesn't really cartoon anymore. He makes like short films and
Oh,
stuff.
Is
Yeah,
wow.
that what he's doing?
he's become a director. So I think I don't know. I guess he had the sophomore jinx a little bit, but I mean, Same Difference is still brilliant if you can find it. Actually, all of his work is
Hmm.
really great if you can find it. And a lot of it was out from for a second. And he is a really great cartoonist. And obviously, since he's going into directing, I mean, he has like this visual sense that's amazing and just this wry sense of humor. And yeah, he kind of, like I said, he kind of came in hot, and then like over the long period of time, uh, it's had a an interesting career. Let's put it that way. But super talented, and his
Mhm.
work you should definitely seek it out.
I
For
would say
sure.
like Gene Yang is really an interesting talent in that, like Kazu, he brings others up with
Hmm.
him,
Hmm.
like Tin Pham.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Tin
yeah.
Pham did sumo, and I think if you follow him on Instagram, he's posting chapters of his current book in progress, where he tells his story of as a Vietnamese immigrant through memorable meals he's had.
Oh.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so like, and every story is like kind of like anchored by a certain food
Hmm.
memory. Like I think the first like um, what was it? There's the Vietnamese crepes that his mom made
Hmm.
to survive in the camps. Uh,
Hmm.
and then there was also this the first steak dinner they had when they came to America. But
Oh.
Amazing.
TN10 used to do like these comics for the East Bay Express about different restaurants. So, and
Right.
Tien
Oh, love
loves to
those.
cook and loves to
Hmm.
eat. So this is, I think, the perfect mix of being a food comic as well as being
I
a really
love.
heartfelt
Yeah.
personal story about being an immigrant.
Well, yeah, he and Gene used to teach together as we see in Dragon Hoops. He's a character that
Yes,
he plays himself. Yeah, they used to teach together at the same school, and
that's right.
they're really good friends. So yeah, yeah, he's got
Yeah.
some great. Oh, that's great. And I think another really good modern one just came out at the either beginning of 2020. I think yeah. My friend Robin Ha did this great book. It's a great Asian American tale, immigration tale. Almost American Girl, and
Oh,
it's incredible. It's about her when she grew up in Seoul with her mom, a single mom, which is tough in South Korea because of their they still have some very sort of sexist, not sort of, but very sexist views on womanhood and motherhood and things like that. And if you're a single mom, it's looked down upon. Um, so, but her mom was doing well and like had her own hair salon and gave her the best life she could, but wanted to give her better. So when
mm.
she's about 13, they're like, "We're going to go on vacation to Alabama," except it wasn't a vacation. And she told her when she got there, "Oh, by the way, we've moved here." So Robin found out the hard way that she was now going to be, living in America. She
Wow.
didn't get to say goodbye to her friend. She didn't get to say, she just thought she was going on a trip. So not speaking any language, she got thrown into high school, and had to learn really get down to it. And then she discovered once you discover your people, her mom found a comic shop and they were teaching and she always drew. She was always an artist. So there was this like art teacher class and she connected with this other girl and became friends there. And then they moved again closer to DC, where it was a more international school. So she met fellow Korean students and was able to talk to them. And her English obviously drastically improved over those years as well. But it's a really great tale to the point where she's like, she looks back at it. She's like, and it was a very difficult relationship with her mother because of what happened, but they were very, very close and they still are to this day. And she talks about how when I talked to her a few weeks ago on the podcast about how like, yeah, I just slowly sort of here's what I want to do, and you have to be. Her mom didn't want to be a character in it at first. She goes, well, then I can't tell the tale.
Oh
You're
wow.
part of my story, and so it was a little push and shove, and her mom finally started opening up more about all those memories when they were kids, and it's an incredible tale. And now she's like, yeah, I'm in. That's I love the title, Almost American Girl. And
Mm.
she's like, yeah, she's an American girl. She moved here against her will, but she became it and embraced it, and has become and she's an incredible cartoonist. She's that before that she had Cook Korean and speaking of food comics, an illustrated cookbook.
Oh, a
What's the one?
Korean
Yes, I
cookbook.
was going to
Yep.
Cook
say
Korean, yes,
she did the cookbook.
yeah, yeah,
There are so many
it's great.
graphic, like we could do a whole subset of graphic novels that are
Oh,
about
I've been talking
food,
about this
but
for ages.
especially I will
Yes.
say a lot of Asian American cartoonists have
Hmm.
done books that really filter their experience through food because it
Yeah.
is so important and such a,
Yeah.
part of the heritage. Do you guys know the book Measuring Up? Have you seen that one?
Why? It
No.
does
Measuring,
sound
okay.
familiar, but
Okay,
why?
it's by written by Lily Lamott, and the illustrator is Anne Shu, and it is another memoir about cooking.
Oh, yes, yeah, I'm looking at it right now. I haven't read it, but I remember
Yes,
seeing
yes,
it,
yes.
but
And
not.
so it's another one where she tries to have a cooking she wants
Mhm,
to win a cooking contest so that she can get a ticket so that she can go back to Taiwan and visit her grandma,
mhm,
who taught her how to cook. So
Ah.
she's a little kid. She's in middle grade school, and so she's struggling to cook, and it's kind of the cooking the cooking
mhm.
competition manga mixed with
Yeah,
the story of the heritage and
yeah.
a family story, and yeah, it's really good actually.
Well, yeah,
So
food, that's, I think that's an important point. Food is such a big part of many cultures, but especially Asian
yes.
culture.
Mm.
And my friend Kui, who was we had on recently, he's the co-writer of Raya and the Last Dragon, and he talked about the importance of
Oh.
food in that film. And then you see
Mm.
it throughout. There's a mishmash of, because he's Vietnamese. You can see Vietnamese food, you can see Filipino food, you can see all this
Mm.
Southeast Asian food, and it's like it's so great. It is such a big part of our culture, and people uh, sit over the dinner table and have these chats and or cooking together. And that's what's great about Cook Korean is that well, she creates a character and makes it more of a comic. Even there are illustrated recipes, she has a narrator character. She talks about how yeah, she didn't really start cooking until Robin herself, until she was older. And then she called her
Mm.
mom, like, give me some recipes, talk me through this, and and she finally started learning the hard way because she was like, she went on some trip to Italy, she said, and then really discovered that she loved it and really got into cooking all of her mom's old recipes and now has gotten really good at it. And I've used several of these recipes. I love cooking Asian food and especially Korean food and Japanese food. Um, so yeah, both of those books are
You
great.
know, Jimmy, if Deb is in New York
Hmm.
when we're all able to travel around the world, I think to thank her for doing the show on short notice,
Hmm.
you should make her lunch.
Oh, sure.
Oh,
Oh
Now,
exciting.
yeah.
now, Deb,
I've had Heidi over several times. Yeah.
yes, and let me tell you, when you go to Jimmy's house and he cooks, it's quite something.
Yeah,
Oh
He
my.
knows.
I made chicken katsu sandos for me, her, and
Woo!
you, and also like I can't
Hmm.
remember what I did. I think I did like some sort of like Japanese potato salad or something really
Yeah,
good, and
it was
so yeah,
Wow.
yeah, I
elaborate.
did this all. Yeah,
And amazing. Oh my God. Yeah.
I love cooking.
So I think this has got to be a date. Please, Jimmy,
Yeah,
I
for
Yes,
want to go to
sure.
please.
Jimmy's
Absolutely,
house for dinner
absolutely,
again. Okay, awesome.
absolutely,
Yes,
absolutely.
hooray.
I'm anxious to cook for people again. I used to do it every week, and now it's like, I haven't done it in over a
Yeah.
year and a half. So yeah, for sure.
All right. Who else? Deb, who else you got?
Let me see. Well, you got Jen Wang, of course.
Yeah,
Oh,
And
yeah.
did you get Leslie Hung for the woman in the
no.
Not Girl?
I mean, we could literally do this nothing but talk about honestly great, Asian
Hmm.
American cartoonists because
And
Yeah.
then there's so many Asian Canadian who I didn't even mention, like
Hmm.
Mariko and
well, we can
Oh, the
do Asian
Tamakus. Yeah.
Canadians. Can we, Jimmy, can we do Asian
It's not.
Canadians?
It's not Asian Canadian Heritage Month. It's Asian American Heritage
sorry,
Month.
man.
Mm.
Otherwise, it's Brian Lee
There's some
O'Malley
great,
too,
yeah.
right?
Oh yeah, there's a lot, like you said, the Tamakis, and of course, yeah, O'Malley. There's tons of Asian
Michael
Canadians, yeah,
DeForge.
for sure, yeah.
Yes.
I
There is
mean,
of course another sort of obvious one over the past few years that came
Ooh.
out, and he's not really a just the book itself. He's not a cartoonist himself, a writer, but he co-wrote his own story. They called us enemy. George
oh yes,
Takei's
of course.
Ah,
incredible
yeah.
graphic, but also what's great is the artist on it, Harvey Becker, is Japanese American, and I loved her. Like she was hadn't really I hadn't heard of her, but doesn't mean anything. But
Mm.
she's incredible work on it, and of course that book has just won all the awards, rightfully so. And I wept after interviewing George Takei at Comic Con in 2019. After I walked away because I was so moved, I was like, I
Ah.
still watch you in Star Trek. It's like he's such a kind man, and his story is incredible about the American internment camps. As he specifies, they are not Japanese internment camps; they are American internment camps that imprison
Mm.
Japanese people. Um, and he was a kid, and he was in there, and he firsthand dealt with that, and it's an incredible moving tale that unfortunately, as we talked about, we still deal with a lot of those issues today.
And it's a really, it's another one that's really
Powerful,
a
powerful
very
book.
powerful book. It's
Hmm.
another one that's really on the short list,
Yeah.
of
Hmm.
like essential reading. I think American Born Chinese and They
And
Call This Enemy are like
Asian
just
American experiences.
yes,
Yeah,
of the Asian
absolutely.
American experience.
Mhm.
Another book though that I think should be on that list is a book, and now I'm going to completely mess up the title because hold on. You know what? I don't want to mess it up.
All
Deb,
right.
you do another one while I make
Well,
sure I
you had
get it
mentioned
right.
Deb. You had mentioned T. Bui in her book,
Well,
the
that's the
best we
one I
could
was
do.
about to say.
The best we could do.
Ah,
T.
Best we could
Bui.
do. That's
Yeah.
it. The best
T.
we could do.
Bui.
that's
Yeah.
a
T.
good
Thi
one.
Bui. Yeah.
Bui. Yes. And
Yeah.
this is another book about the Vietnamese immigrant
Yeah. It's
experience. And
incredible tale.
it's
Yeah.
incredible. She's an amazing artist and just is
Yeah.
so beautifully written. Um, she talks to her mother and
Hmm.
goes back to Vietnam to kind of confront it, which a lot of these memoirs do have the return.
Mm.
I mean, it's fascinating reading them all as a
Hmm.
whole, just to compare and contrast. I mean, every story is different, but there are these themes that come back over and over again, and she just really deals with confronting this and being American, the American
Hmm.
part of Asian American, and
Yeah.
also the Vietnamese experience is
Hmm.
something that is so unique in our history, obviously, because
Hmm.
we
Sure. Yeah.
kind
A
of
lot of war
almost,
over there that we helped create.
yeah,
Yeah.
we had this
Yeah.
long endless war, and I love that in Watchmen they made Vietnam the
Hmm.
51st state or the 52nd state. That
Yeah.
was such
Hmm.
a great conceit to kind
Hmm.
of explore that whole idea.
Yeah.
But I mean, I grew up during the Vietnam War, and now I search for Vietnamese food, which
It's
is
great.
it's great, and it's just over the last 50 years, obviously, that this has become a real American story, and there are
Mhm.
some really good graphic novels about the Vietnamese experience. But I do think the
Yeah.
best that we could do is really a masterpiece
Yeah.
and
And
should
she's
be
she's
on that
great. Yeah.
short list.
It got
Yeah.
assigned to like as a general book for all students of
Hmm.
UCLA,
Yeah.
wasn't it?
Oh,
I
It,
think
yeah.
it.
It's gotten a lot. Like she still like talks on it, lectures on it because it's such an important book.
Mhm.
Yeah, I interviewed her at TCAF when it came out. It's just like, incredible, incredible woman. But just like, man, just her work is beautiful, like watercolors. It's just a beautiful looking book as well as such a touching, moving, heartfelt story. So good,
I
so
think
yeah,
good.
T is also kind of similar like Jean, and maybe I don't know if this is common, but she does this. She in insofar as she helps bring up other creators.
yes.
Yeah.
Um, she runs a comics camp here in the Bay Area,
Mm.
um, where a bunch
Oh,
of
that's
cartoonists
great.
we all get together and
Mm.
we go camping together and
Oh, really?
Oh
That's
my
awesome.
God.
she's a big camping advocate, so
Wow.
she arranges everything, and I think Raina is now helping with that, but
Oh, that's great.
it's
I
a
want to go
wonderful a
camping.
way for us all to like bond and network
Oh,
and stuff outside of a comic convention.
yeah.
Oh
Oh,
yeah.
I will come grill and do marshmallows, but then it's back to the hotel for me. I'm sorry.
Oh, come
I'm
on,
not a
glamping.
camper. Nope.
Glamping is, come on, you could glamp, Jimmy. I know you could.
As an air conditioner in that tent, then it better be
Well,
bug nets, air conditioner.
I lived in a tent for 3 months with my
Oh,
grandparents, and
wow.
so I have no fear of camping.
It's
That's
not
a
a
sport.
fear. It's just I'm just fancy as fuck.
Yeah, that's a tale for
I
another
like my
time.
luxuries. I like
Yeah.
my luxuries.
Oh,
I
oh, I
grew
was
up
gonna
poor.
say,
I
like,
like my luxuries now.
we were talking about Vietnamese. Have you read The Magic Fish by Trung Le
We were
Oh,
Nguyen?
just talking about
we were
this, and I have
talking.
not yet,
Yes, so
but I have it.
we're
I have
hoping to
it.
actually have Trung on the show
Yeah.
for this month. So we
Oh,
want
you
to do,
should.
yeah, we
Yeah.
want to do a show where we have some contemporary authors on. So we're working on that.
Yeah.
Hopefully he will be on. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean that's another book that
Mhm.
deals with the Asian, the Vietnamese, specifically the Vietnamese American experience.
Mhm.
And oh my God, that guy is such a good artist. Holy
Yeah.
crap.
I
Oh,
Uh,
remember when it came out, hearing about it, and I think even got the press for it. I was gonna get the book, and then some reason, who knows what happened, and I ended up never. Then Heidi and I were talking about it. I was like, oh, I gotta get it. So I have it. I'm gonna read it very soon. So I can't
and
wait. Yeah.
it's also a queer narrative because
Hmm.
like that's about, spoilers, but
Hmm.
it's just about him, knowing that he is gay and trying to find a way to tell his family about it.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
and finding in Vietnamese myth and stories kind of the vehicle to do that. But it's just again
Mhm.
multi-leveled. I mean, the storytelling is so deep and rich and just
Mhm.
so many layers to it. So yeah, I mean
Yeah.
that book came out last year, kind of has been winning all the awards very deservedly.
Yeah. I think not well. It's not a comic book. I think it's a zine. But I met her first at TCAF a few years back. We became very close friends. Insu Jung, her zine Korea Angry. She's amazing. She's a Korean American immigrant. She's an American citizen now. Um, but it's incredible. She's created this little puppet she made, and she makes all these tiny little props and then films them, and makes this zine out of it. And the character is basically a version of her because she's so sweet and nice and lovely, but the character just curses and sex positive and like yeah, all this other stuff. But it started out mostly talking about like her it was sort of her outlet of dealing with racism a little and sexism living in America, as an Asian woman and like
Mm.
the lines she got told by white dudes at bars and just like horrific terrible and her dealing with all that and then but the past year I'm so proud of her. It's like the stuff she's been doing, she's so smart, she's been so educational and political with it. She always has a little bit with it, but especially with starting with the Black Lives Matter movement, obviously with Stop Asian Hate and things like that, she's been not just educating fellow Americans, but also her Korean. She'll do them, and she'll even put some up in Korean as well as
Mm.
American as English. It is in English, but the comic, but she'll explain matters. She'll talk about things, and and she's very liberal, and
Which
explains
book
her
is this,
side.
by the way? I didn't catch that.
It's a zine. It's called it's like Korea Angry. So like Korean,
Ah,
so like could match the two words matched together, Korea
I
and
love
Angry.
it. I love it.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it's a zine. Issue 10 just came out. So you can buy the collected 1 through 6 on our website. The rest of the zines there. But if you go to her Instagram, she puts up stuff all the time, and it's always very current about what happens with like with police matters recently. She's been
Wow.
posting a lot about that, or with the Stop Asian Hate and things like that. She's been putting up a lot of things like that, and it's incredible. But just her little character she's created, and it's like the work she puts into. I've seen her workshop. It's she makes these tiny little things and then it makes these
Mm. Oh
pictures
yeah.
of them, and it's really really great. And she's so smart. I'm so just moved
Yeah,
and
she's
and
like
and
like,
by her work. It's so
Wallace and
great.
Gromit of, making these
Yeah, that's a good
models.
way to look
Yeah,
at it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but it's so time consuming. Yeah, she's amazing. It's just so again, just the amount of work she puts into it.
Yeah, I could just show you real quick if you want just like a
Yes, I got
Oh
you
yeah.
sharing. Yeah, let's go.
so it's like a little bit of I can go to just a page here, just like a
Oh my goodness.
random
Wow.
if it opens up. But yeah, so that's like the little character she's created, that's her. But these are just some of the comps, so you can see it's sort of like more
Oh my gosh.
it's like
Wow.
she made these little bottles of soju and
Oh,
she talks about, she talks
How
about like
amazing.
things about the Asian American experience. Hey, if you enjoy our music, the Korean music and our literature and our learn about our history, learn about whatever, things like that. But it's really really great stuff. It's I highly recommend it. So um yeah,
yeah,
That's great.
you can
she's
check
Yeah,
that
I
great.
was
out.
talking with So Young from no, I'm sorry, my bad. Juyeon from Nien Press, Juyeon Lee,
Mm,
and she was saying that previously when Korean comics would come over,
mm,
they were told like sell it like it's manga. And
yeah,
she says now retailers are actually coming up to her. It's like we want Korean content,
yeah,
and she was
manhwa,
saying,
yeah, as
and
it's called,
Man.
manhwa, yeah,
like
Well,
it's like webtoons and stuff like that. He
yeah,
said, and it's largely driven by BTS.
yeah,
well,
absolutely,
let's talk about that for just a
Hmm.
minute
yeah.
because Jimmy is also obsessed with K-pop.
Ooh,
Well,
okay.
And
and it's got me in turn. It's got me
Mhm.
interested more in Korean culture. I watch so much Korean TV
Mm-hmm.
now, and I've started even like with because of a lot of times Insu's comics are educational. I'll look up the story of like this great naval battle, that happened in Korea between Korea and Japan, and how it was like almost a 300 experience it had, where Korea, was able to beat this great naval, force from Japan. But yeah.
Wow.
well, but I do think kind of you know, Korean Korean culture. Obviously, Parasite, Bong Joon-ho is
Hmm.
huge.
Mhm.
winning the Oscar last year, and a Minari this year. So, which we're
Oh,
hoping to talk about again on a on
God.
during this month of celebration. But
Mhm.
BTS obviously, the new invasion. The Mop Tops
Mhm.
might have come back in the '60s, but BTS has come, and as the hair, the Silver Surfers of the Galactus of Korean culture here.
Well, it goes back, and I've also done I get really interested in something. I do a little thing. It started before that because BTS and Blackpink are part of sort of the third generation, the K-pop they call it.
Right.
So it started in the late '90s, and I find it interesting because it's a huge influence of like hip hop and American pop. It almost has like remember the New Jack Swing sound
Mhm.
where it was like pop, hip hop, and rap. That's what K-pop still is to this day. Every song has a rap
Mhm.
in it. For some reason it's like it's great. Every group has a rapper, guy, girl group, whatever. But they started that even the first generation or second, where they called the Hallyu wave, where it was like
Mm.
basically we're gonna try to break the West.
Mm.
And you saw in like groups like Girls' Generation, one of the biggest girls group ever, come out of K-pop. They appeared on a couple American shows, but yeah, it didn't really hit. Same thing with Wonder Girls. They appeared on like the Wendy Williams show, but people didn't really know what to get. And it wasn't until 2012's, of course, famous Gangnam Style that people are like,
That's
"Oh,
straight. Yeah.
what is this?" And he broke the yeah, the tore the roof off with it, and people started getting more notice. And then the rise of BTS, like I'll never forget, that was the American Music Awards where they first appeared, and like the whoever was hosting, and when they every time they announced their name, the crowd was so loud, and where American artists were like, "Who the fuck are these guys?" And like some of them knew them, of course. Other ones were like, "I don't BTS," and like screams were 10 times louder than any of them ever
Well,
got.
it's too bad we don't have Alex Liu with us today because he went and saw them at City Field. So
Oh,
Did
I
he
would
really? Oh
love
my
to see them.
gosh.
he did. He
Oh my
did.
God.
Wow.
Our Alex, he's got to be there, man. He's got to be there.
Their show, like I've seen their concert just online. I was like, they put
Yeah.
on the like that. Like I was supposed to go see Blackpink, in 2019, and but then I couldn't make because something had happened personally. But it was like, oh, they another one put on a great show.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Well,
but
they
incredible.
just were when they were on the Grammys this year and they did their song
Hmm.
which it came out last year, and I didn't even realize that was BTS. I got to be
Yeah,
honest. I only know
Dynamite.
Mm.
Their
Dynamite.
first all
I
English song.
I
Yeah,
only know every time I heard that song, I was like, what
it's
a great
really
song.
good.
And they
It's a
were like,
really
they
good
said they
song.
specifically made this song during the pandemic to be just the most upbeat pop,
Yeah,
and then
and
of
they're
course
right.
Ah.
the performance that they did at the Grammys
Well,
was,
did you
like,
see their set?
yeah,
Like
that was like
the,
a
the
freaking Michael Bay
producers.
movie.
No, the producers got a hold of the Grammys producers and talked about the
Aw.
set there, and they recreated the set in LA in Korea. So it seemed like they were there to make it seem like, hey, we're still there. And I mean, they didn't obviously didn't lie, say they were there, but it was
Yeah.
like they were like, yeah, they just want to seem like, so they recreated the entire Grammy set and the look of it in LA in Seoul, and it was incredible.
Damn.
Yeah.
So, but what do we think of, these, like I said, these are the kind of the cutting edge of the Korean. Uh, yeah, I'm so careful every time I
Well,
say this. Then what I just want to say, it's like it's so easy when we're talking to say things like the Korean invasion,
hmm
and I've been so careful, like not to use words like that
hmm
because of everything that's going on. Like we
sure.
so often couch these things as an
hmm
invasion
Yeah.
or in words like that,
That's why
and it's
the Hallyu wave sounds so much better. It's like
yes,
it's a
exactly.
wave, it's a wave of
The wave,
positivity and
right,
love
right.
and
But
music.
but it's just really important, I think, for white folks like me to be
Hmm.
very careful how we
Sure.
talk about these things so we don't perpetuate any of these horrible,
Yeah.
deadly stereotypes.
Yeah.
But anyway, the wave is coming. So what
Oh, it's
about
here. The
the
wave is here.
webtoon and the web
Well,
comics? I
that's the
mean,
thing. Webtoons, because it's a Korean-based company, Webtoons started have these wildly successful. Finally came over the states here and has made a big mark here. But a lot of their comics, not a lot of them, many of their comics are based on K-pop groups, or
Mm.
many of their comics become K-dramas.
mm,
Very successful
Mm.
K-dramas, which are all on Netflix. We can watch now.
yeah. And
So
so,
it's
Deb,
been a big part of it.
you're hearing that there's a growing demand for Korean content.
Hmm.
Mhm. Actually, the Yen Press has been posting ads on their Twitter feed saying, "We need Korean translators."
Oh,
because
Really
we're doing more content and we need more people
nice.
to help us translate. So I think
yeah.
that's very positive.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I mean, there's the other giant. I just wrote a story on the beat about how the other giant Korean webcomics company, Kakao,
hmm
which I'm
Mm,
not sure. I
Well,
think,
Kakao Talk is a big.
yeah,
Kakao Talk's a big sort of
yeah, it's the app.
Twitter,
It's
but it's
like the
it's an
what's,
app. Yeah, it's
yeah,
like
it's like
it's a
what's
big
Twitter.
it's a social media type
Yes,
thing.
so
Yeah, yeah.
they're like
The
kind of
Kakao
the
Talk. Yeah.
WhatsApp, Twitter of
hmm
Korea. But
hmm
anyway, they also are a huge webcomics portal, and they are also coming to America.
Yeah.
So,
mm,
this will there will be more. I mean, it's here. It's here. You're right.
Yeah.
It's here. It's here to stay. It's amazing.
Well,
It's
they embrace the
yeah.
West a lot, and sometimes to the chagrin of some more traditional Koreans. But you listen, every K-pop song has English in it.
Mm,
Everyone has
mm,
not just almost every title is an English title. Like I said, BTS just released their first all English song ever, Dynamite, over the summer, which is a giant hit. Blackpink did an all
mm,
English song. Um, but yeah, it's they heavily embrace the West and want to and that's how they've become so successful because they've you know opened up because especially
yeah.
after
Yeah.
their hit
Well,
song.
they
Yeah,
know they know this is a big market. The English
yeah,
language market is a huge
yeah,
market,
yeah,
and why not? Why
yeah, for
not
sure.
expand?
hmm
Well, I'm going to talk just a couple. Speaking of which, Korean American cartoonist Jim Lee.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
and he
What
was
he's done for comics, absolutely. My
yeah,
God.
absolutely. And he was born in Seoul, and he does embrace his Korean American heritage. And yeah, what can I say about Jim Lee? He's you know, one of the most important figures of comics of
Yeah.
the last 30 years, co-founder of Image Comics, obviously drew some of the definitive X-Men comics.
hmm
He's the president of DC Comics
Wildcats
now.
and
He
everything.
runs
Yeah.
DC Comics, but he's also a wonderful guy, father of nine.
Yeah.
nine.
Nine,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Blended family,
Damn.
a
Yeah.
blended
It's blended
family.
family. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
but
Yeah.
he has, I think he has
Like.
five of his
Yeah.
own.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And
think it is.
four
Yeah.
of his stepkids. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I asked him one time, I said, how do you even go on an outing? And he's like, well, we have two minivans. He's like, if there were to be a family outing,
Yeah.
obviously a lot of his kids are older now. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah, he said just getting ready to go on an outing is,
Yeah. His journey is incredible because like I remember when we first heard about like he was always a superstar artist, and of course they all left to go form Image, and then they were the hit. Everyone still wanted a piece of them. But when Wildstorm sold to DC, people were like, "Oh no, that's going to be the end of Wildstorm, the end of Jim Lee." And look what happened. Like
yeah.
now he's like president of DC, and it's like, wow.
Well,
Mm,
Jim went to Princeton University, a very
hmm
good Ivy League school, and his
hmm
parents wanted him to be a doctor. They wanted him to
Yeah.
be a psychologist. And,
hmm
obviously he didn't do that, but he's a very smart,
Very smart guy.
very,
Yeah.
very, very smart
Yeah.
businessman, also, obviously. And yeah, I mean, Jim Lee is just one of the biggest names
hmm
in the comics industry right
And
now.
we're sticking with Korea. Another great Korean American writer, Greg Pak.
Oh,
Greg,
oh,
ah,
the things Greg has done for comics, Asian characters creating in comics, he created the first Filipino superhero. I was so happy and proud when he did that in Marvel. His Ages of Atlas, I jokingly called Asians of Atlas because they're all Asian. I loved it because it had a Korean hero, it had a Chinese hero, it had a Filipino hero. He's always introducing Asian characters into like Amadeus Cho became a main character is
yeah,
now the
a
Hulk in
huge,
Marvel
huge character.
Comics. His other comic, Ronin Island, is great. Um, just the things he's done, and even when he was doing the Firefly comics, and we won't go too deep into this because I've fallen out of love with Firefly over the years because, as you may know,
Oh, we all know.
it's like oh, America and China were the two major powers that survived, but the only time you see anything Chinese is either they're dressed like it or there's background or they curse in Chinese. There's no Chinese characters, so he started writing the comics. He goes, oh, I'm gonna rectify that. So he has Asian characters in his comics now in the Firefly comics. I'm like, okay, right on. That's how you do it.
Mm.
But he's done so many great things for creating just awareness and
Oh,
creating
yeah,
for Asian characters.
that guy,
Yeah,
another one who's
I love Greg.
so talented and
Mhm,
so
mhm,
nice.
mhm.
Oh,
ah,
Nicest guys of the world.
just one of
Love
the
him.
and just I just love talking to Greg. I
I do
learn
too.
something every time I talk to him, and
Yeah. He's
Yeah,
also a
he's
filmmaker, and
yeah, oh yeah,
Oh,
he
wow.
makes movies.
some of his old stuff is
Mhm.
online. It's really, really great. I really love it. He has
Yeah.
like a little couple of superhero shorts he made. They're really great.
You know what's funny? I first met Greg. This is just kind of like sidebar, but how does comics work? But I first met Greg through my friend Mark Panicia, who was an editor. I met Mark first when he was an editor at Tokyo Pop doing their original English language comics way back in the day. And then he went to Marvel, and Mark and I were pals. And it was at New York Comic Con, and we are like, "Oh, let's grab a cup of coffee." And then he's like, "Oh, this is my friend Greg," and Greg's going to start writing. I forget what the first book he did, but Mark bought
I think it
Greg.
was the Phoenix
Yeah,
In Song, the X
yeah.
one. Yeah, I think it was that
Well,
one. Yeah.
Mark was editing some of the X books then, so
Hmm.
he did,
Hmm.
bring Greg in,
Yeah.
and the rest is history. But it's just credit to Mark Benicia as having the vision to say this guy,
Hmm.
like he's a friend. I think they were friends, but he
Hmm.
was like, oh, this guy's gonna, be a good writer. Let's give him a shot. And
Yeah.
now he's such an important figure.
He's
in-
also one of those figures that, like, whether certainly kudos to Mark for bringing him in, but had Mark not, he's one of those names that he would have found his way
Oh
up.
yeah,
Yeah, he
absolutely,
definitely would have found his way up.
absolutely,
Absolutely.
absolutely. Yes,
Yeah.
100%.
Everyone needs a little boost, of course, but
Right.
yeah,
But
he
I
definitely was
just,
a
it
bit of.
always amazes
Yeah.
me though, like, I think
Oh,
like me too, when I, get an editing job, I'm like, oh, which
yeah.
one of the people that I know who are the most talented
Yeah. Yeah.
bring in
Oh,
here? And
we're not mentioning our Pokemon pal, Amy Chu.
ah,
Oh, yeah. Yes, of
Amy,
course. Yeah.
I
Yes, of
know.
course.
Yes, yeah, Amy
And
is,
or Marjorie Liu.
and oh,
Oh
Marjorie
my
Liu.
God, monstrous! My God, yeah,
Yeah, well,
absolutely.
she's
Oh,
amazing. Also, they're all, but yeah, Amy is another one who just said, I'm going to do this. Like, Amy's
yeah,
one of the smartest people I know. I mean, if you talk to her, it's like, yeah, she went to MIT and Harvard and
yeah, she's great.
like, and right, she doesn't, she's just so super smart. Like,
Yeah,
and then,
I mean,
but
she did
also,
a comic with DMC. Come on now,
yeah, and then, yeah,
that's
she's always
amazing.
just hanging out
That's
with
amazing.
DMC and,
It's amazing.
and we play Pokemon with her. We go on raids with her.
That's
So,
hilarious.
so, but yeah, you guys gotta, like I
That's
said,
awesome.
I'm going to Maine next week, and I'm not
Nice.
going to be near anything. So you guys gotta, we gotta plan some raids next week, okay?
I,
Well,
I
I
don't know
want to
these words you
talk.
speak of, but
I'm so sorry. My allergies are really just. I'll mute myself next time. Okay, I want to talk about one of the absolute um legend class S tier creators. Uh, Larry Hama.
I have them on my. Yep.
Ah.
Yeah,
And no
I
one is half the battle. Yes.
and yeah, and he is. Let's talk about mentors,
Hmm.
editors, writers. I
Mm.
mean, he has had an unparalleled career in comics and media. I mean, he also
He
was
was an
like,
actor for a very short time. Yeah.
yeah, but he also, but in the short time that he was an actor, he managed to be on MASH
Yeah.
regularly,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
sitcom MASH that was so huge. He was,
Yeah.
regular extra on there, and
Hmm.
also on Broadway.
Yeah. He did a Broadway musical.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Oh
I
my
only learned that
gosh.
recently.
Yeah, and
But he
also
was
was
more
in a
so
rock
like he wasn't a
band.
singer or dancer. They kind of used him just for his look and for everything else. But yeah, it
Right,
was
but
great.
it doesn't matter.
Hell no, it
He was
doesn't
on
matter.
Broadway. He was
If I
on
could have been on
Broadway.
Broadway doing that, but I'll stay there holding a
Yeah, right.
whatever.
And then he was in a rock band also. I mean, he just did it all. And
Wow.
then he wrote G.I. Joe, which
Yeah.
is one of the most
The
absolute
definitive GI Joe writer. Yeah.
definitive, like G.I.
Yeah.
Joe, which has influenced all the films,
Yeah.
all the toys, all the
Yeah.
storytelling since then. I mean, it is the myth. He was the myth maker of the entire G.I. Joe storyline.
Hmm.
Just took a doll and made it a
Hmm.
institution, and just as smart. He's wonderful. I mean, anytime you get to spend with Larry, he, you're sitting at the learning tree. What can I say?
Hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of great like younger artists that have come up. Like I mean, our friend Ming Doyle, incredible artist and writer. Uh, she did that recent. It came out of nowhere. I didn't remember hearing about it till like pretty late about the DC MetaHuman book she did. What was the Anatomy of a MetaHuman? Like
Oh.
incredible, big hardcover book is beautiful. Like her art is stunning, and like where she's done. She did the book that they made the movie out of. The kitchen, and she worked on Hellblazer and Mara and the Banks, all sorts of stuff. She's a great cartoonist. I love her, and she's just another super sweet, nice person. So You're on mute, Heidi. I think you're on mute.
Right, sorry, I
There
muted
you are.
myself so I could blow my nose and
It's
then
all right.
unmuted. Yeah, I love Ming, so super. And I would love. I mean, the kitchen is weird. I mean, this
Mhm.
is Vertigo comic got made into a movie that's kind of a notorious flop, but it got
I
made
liked
into a
it.
movie.
I
It got
saw the
made
movie. I
into a
liked it.
movie. Who
I
cares?
liked it. Yeah, that was a great cast. And that was really cool. I liked it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so many great. I mean, we can rattle down a list. I mean, Cliff Chang, Leno Francis
Oh,
Yu, Annie Wu, Eric Canetti, just like so many. There's a bit Jeremy Holt's a great writer. He's got a book out this later this month. Made in Korea, which is I read the first two
oh,
issues. Great.
I
Yeah.
got one though. I
Yeah.
got one. That we haven't mentioned who's really good. Mary Naomi.
Oh yes, of course. Mary. Now,
Ah.
yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
And so Mary's somebody who came out of kind of the very
Hmm.
indie, mini comic stuff drawn, and then she's really got like a whole body of work. I think, a lot of it's autobiographical, but she's also working on a YA list now. She did this book, Kiss and Tell, a romantic resume, which was just what it sounds like. Very, very,
Hmm.
bold
Very
story about
personal. Yeah.
very personal. Yeah. And then she also did the book Turning Japanese, that is very much about what we've been talking about, just with, you know, like being Asian American and,
Yeah.
dealing with the prejudice and
Yep.
racism that you unfortunately comes with that. And then, like I said, she's working on a YA series right now, that's being published by Learner. So she's like really super talented.
Mhm.
Her work's really unflinching and honest. I think
Yeah.
those are the words that apply to it. But yeah, she's great.
Yeah, David Nak. I want to met David Nakayama is a friend of mine who's just done some really great work for Marvel and Hasbro, and he did the Big Hero 6 series years ago, and you can't see it. I can bring it over, but he actually drew me in it, so I gotta give him props.
Oh
It's
wow.
really great, but but he's just an incredible cartoonist as well, really really great. We mentioned our friend Rafael Kayanen, and of course, great Filipino artist, and like he did a lot of the Conan the Barbarian books for Marvel, but he's worked on so many things, and he's such another incredible story, like what he's done in his life. He works in TV
Oh
and film
yeah.
now. He's what we call in the Philippines a tuhan, a martial arts master. He's designed weapons. He works as like a on
Fight court
CSI.
doesn't
Yeah,
he
yeah.
do fight, fight
Yep,
coordinating?
fight stuff with
Yeah.
CSI, and I always joke with him. There was,
Wow.
there was that story where LL Cool J house got busted into, and LL like took the guy down. Now LL's a big guy, but I was like, I think Ralph might have helped with that little fight. Like, maybe training you fighting might have helped you. Now LL can handle himself, but yeah, but
Yeah.
but Ralph's like what a great like he's so like his you look at his art, he's so detailed. His art is incredible. Look at his stuff, like his Conan stuff. You're like,
Oh yeah.
and he'll post stuff on Instagram. Oh, just a quick thing he threw together like on his
Ugh,
iPad.
I
You're like,
know.
what?
But
What
he's
are you
very
talking
but
about?
he's very much of that Filipino tradition,
Yeah,
which is very
yeah,
elaborate, like very
yeah.
elaborate
Very
inking
elaborate.
style, and
Yes.
Mm.
and by drawing Conan is, obviously there is the rich heritage of Filipino artists working on kind of
Yes.
sword and sorcery
Yeah.
uh characters. And
Yeah.
then Alfredo Alcala, who we were talking about earlier,
Mhm.
did his own barbarian Voltar, who's like
Yeah.
was really well known in the Philippines. So
Mhm.
yeah, there's a direct connection there. But yeah,
Yeah.
Raf is great.
Raph and
Um,
I've talked to him designing a tattoo for me because I'm just like
Oh my
I
gosh.
want his like a little like with the Filipino heritage we've been talking about it. So I'm like, yeah.
well, I got one who sometimes uh, isn't recognized as much as being a
Mhm.
Filipino American cartoonist, but I think because she was such a groundbreaking female cartoonist, which
Mhm.
is its own thing, but
Oh.
the one and only legend, S tier, Linda Barry.
Oh God, yeah.
Oh.
And she is, she's talked a lot more about her Filipino heritage now, but and her books obviously,
Mhm.
Marlis and all that. I mean, what can I say about Linda Barry? She's probably, I think Linda Barry and Alan Moore are the greatest pure writers ever in comics. Like their writing in their comics is just so unbelievable. Like her work just always brings me to tears. It's so much about childhood. It's about, the loss and the longing of childhood, and the cruelty that that children are inflicted with and their search for identity and meaning. And it's just,
Hmm.
she's amazing.
Yeah, I remember reading her stuff when I was young because she used to like do those just little strips. They'd be like one of our local
Mm,
papers, and I was like, oh, this is really cool stuff. I remember like really liking it.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's been around a while. She's awesome.
we live in such incredible times that that there are so many talents and so much
Hmm.
diversity of
Yeah.
output. I mean, we've talked about like all these everything from like Conan the Barbarian to like
Hmm.
indie comics to
Zines
think
to whatever.
zine,
Yeah.
yeah, and web comics and
Hmm.
cookbooks,
Yeah. Yeah.
kids
Absolutely.
books, very very adult books.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think it's what's wonderful is that at one point I think Jeff Yang, the blogger
Mm,
who
yeah.
does Angry
Yeah.
Asian Men,
Yeah. Hmm.
he was doing a little thread like, what's the funniest story you have of people mistaking you for another Asian person at
God.
work?
Hmm.
And they're super funny but
Yeah.
it's kind of like, I think most Asian people have this experience of being mistaken for another Asian person,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Like I think Nidhi Chanani was saying like, oh, people thought she was Mindy Kaling, and she goes, we
No.
look nothing alike.
I know. It's so true.
But I think now it's when thanks to these stories, it's not just Asian. We can tell you can very distinctly tell that there's a Vietnamese experience,
Yes.
there's a
Hmm.
Filipino experience, there's a
Yeah.
Korean experience, and that's really lovely.
Yeah. And we talked
Kind of
about
like,
this. Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. We talked when we had Quion talking Raya in the Last Dragon, or at least when I had him on, I interviewed him for the show. We talked about that. I think we might have talked to him when he was on as well. If you haven't seen the movie, there's this whole idea of Kuman. We are Kumandra, and
mm,
it's a whole idea of like different Asian cultures coming together. And that's something as a kid I remember, how they always like to lump Asians together. And I know that can be negative, but even since I was a kid, I always saw it as something positive. I'm like, I'm proud to be lumped together with a Korean person or Chinese or Japanese or whoever, Vietnamese, in that group. But I also want my own individualism. Obviously, I'm Filipino,
mhm,
but I appreciate Korean culture, Japanese, Vietnamese, Thai, everything like that. Um, so I, understand the idea of it, well, how it can have sort of both sides of the negative and positive, but I really like the positive side of it, where, yeah, we are Kumaj, we are all one, we are, we all have some very similar things in our cultures, so I always like that idea.
Yeah, I mean, again, people, we're living in such horrible times. I don't even know how to address them, to be honest, because it's just,
Hmm.
I just
Hmm.
don't understand the stupidity and cruelty that we see out there. But, people
mm,
talk about forced diversity. It's like, do you not understand that the world is a very diverse place?
Hmm.
like,
mm,
like
Yeah,
it's
look around you.
and also freaking Spock. Don't you remember infinite diversity? Infinite creativity and infinite diversity. I mean, uh, Spock was all about the diversity, which is in nature. So,
mm,
just having these amazing to me, there's nothing more exciting than discovering another culture that takes me out of myself, that
Yeah.
takes me
mm,
out of my world. It makes me see the world through someone else's eyes or through another experience to understand another person's experience. That's why I love fiction. That's why I love movies. That's why I love
Yeah.
comics that take me to this other place so I can understand more and I can feel more,
Yeah, I
you
can't.
know?
I literally had this conversation recently with somebody online about that, where they're just like, "Yeah, it just bugs me when they try to throw just try to throw the message in or the
The
politicize in.
message.
I was like, okay, I understand what you're saying. Like, I watched Glee to the bitter end, and it became message of the week, which was annoying. Where I was like, let's make sure I go, but if they do something where it's like it's a casting thing, they're trying to make an all Asian cast or more Asian or more Black or more Latino. That's what the world is. What's it like? What and like the person's like, well, and I don't think they were trying to be racist or whatever. I think they were just really trying to understand it from their white background. And I go, here's something I think we need to understand. Keep forgetting who told me this. We need to retrain our brains. Because even as a Filipino American growing up, I would see things and go, because I'm used to like, oh, white people started all this or did all this. That's what it is. And even when I was an actor doing The King and I, and there was four Asians in the cast, and I was just like, oh, okay, well, I guess they couldn't find anybody, or there wasn't enough people in there to do it, so that's fine. Now I don't think it's fine. For many years, I don't think it's fine. But so that's why when now suddenly there's these amazing, like Crazy Rich Asians or Raya and the Last Dragon or even the new Kung Fu series, and things that which did an incredible episode recently where it dealt with Black Lives Matter, and because there's also because of white supremacy, there's the pitting of races against each other. Um, but that's the world. Look at the world around you, and that's what I'm trying to explain to this person in this conversation. I'm like, look at the world. Isn't the world diverse already? And if yours isn't, then maybe you should do something about that because that's what the world is. So when I see a show nowadays that has a predominantly white cast, or I read a comic, or read a book, or read whatever, I say, I'm always like, huh, does that need to be that? This character could be like, oh, you're just throwing that in to throw it in. No, we're throwing that in because that's what the world is.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
that's what I don't understand.
I
It's like,
don't
oh,
understand.
you're throwing in diversity. It's just don't
No.
just look around you. Just
Yeah.
look around you.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we live in very cosmopolitan
Well, we
areas.
do, but
Let's be blunt. But I
Hmm.
think it's and I grew up in a like basically it's my majority minority in Hawaii.
Hmm.
right?
Mm.
So, that's a completely
Yeah.
different mindset, right? But I'd love to tell these people, like, if you're afraid of that world ever becoming to be, I can tell you on this side, the food's a lot better.
That's so great.
Yeah, and
Well, that's what's funny is that
I'll speak to that.
some of these people who like complain about that, like they're the first to like, let's go get some Korean barbecue, let's go get get the Chinese
I mean,
food. I'm like,
diversity means more flavors, more,
yeah, exactly,
you
yeah,
know?
exactly. I totally agree. Yeah, cooking is such a metaphor.
It is.
Absolutely, yeah.
It truly is. And I mean, I love Asian food because it, a lot of it doesn't have dairy in it. And most people,
Oh.
guess what? Almost all adults have a problem to some degree, greater or lesser degree, digesting dairy. So when you eat delicious food that doesn't have dairy, you actually do feel better afterwards, right? And so that's one of the reasons why I just prefer Asian. I could eat it all Asian diet.
Hmm.
Um, and sometimes you try to learn how to cook some of it. I'll never forget one time I went to a Vietnamese restaurant here that was a little uh uh it was the food was great, but it was a little
A little
higher end.
dodgy. No, no,
No, no, no, no, no, it was
no.
higher end.
Oh, oh,
And
okay.
then we were trying, it had just opened, so I was trying to make friends with the owner, and I was like, oh, I just loved Vietnamese food. I said, I mean, I love it so much, there's so few restaurants here, I even have tried to cook it. And he, oh my god, the look that he gave.
Ah.
And I was like, I said, well, it wasn't any good. And he's like, okay.
Also, Vietnamese food had a giant influence on from France because France was in Vietnam
Well,
forever, and it
that's
really
true,
influenced the
but it,
cooking. Yeah,
that Vietnamese food, and if you ever have really good Cambodian food
yeah,
with a French influence, oh,
mhm,
they're both, oh,
yeah.
they're so good. Yeah, Deb, I envy you in the Bay Area with your plethora of all these regional variations of Asian
I
Yeah,
food.
mean, we've
come
got a
on over.
pretty.
We'll go to Burma Superstore and you'll love it.
Oh, nice. There was like used to be a good Burmese restaurant up west side. I don't know if it's there anymore or not, but we've got a pretty good selection of Asian diversity of Asian food here in New
We
York City
do,
too.
we
Yeah,
do. I just,
yeah.
the food's a little fresher in the Bay Area. I stand for New York, but
Hmm.
I'll say if well, they got in San Francisco WonderCon, or not WonderCon, but
Fan Expo.
Fan Expo coming, so maybe we'll
Hmm.
go
Come
travel
on
there.
down.
All
Yeah,
right,
come on out.
excellent.
Oh, I wanted to mention before, because we didn't mention another aspect of Asian American is our Southeast Asian
Yeah.
Southeast Asian Indian friends.
Oh,
Yes,
Like
yes,
yes, of
that's
course.
true.
Nidhi,
Yes.
like Nidhi Chanani,
Yes,
and she has
Pashmina.
a new
Yeah,
book
yeah.
called Jukebox coming out. I read it on
Mm,
NetGalley. It's quite fun.
excellent. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
She did the Pashmina book, right?
Hmm.
Was that the one? Yeah, yeah. I was. We had an interview set up, and then it fell through at New York Comic Con one year. I was really wanted to talk to her about it.
Oh,
I,
Um,
yeah,
yeah,
I,
lots of
I,
good
I
stuff for
think
sure.
there's a lot of South Asian cartoonists. I think that's, India itself is kind of getting a bigger and bigger comics culture.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I mean, we're going to see huge, huge things coming out of India and
Yeah.
Southern Asia for sure. I think the comics culture there is um, Yeah, it's definitely. I don't want to say it's emerging because they have, of course, a very rich
Mhm.
tradition of comics, as every country does. But it's they're getting a lot more influence. They're getting the manga influence, the U.S. influence. So it's getting that stew of
Yeah.
diversity
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
makes everything grow and expand. So,
What's interesting, like where you're from, like obviously in America, when you think of Asian American, you think of, you do think of like more Far East, you think more, Japan, China, Korea, but even like you can get Philippines and this like that, but you don't think of like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, but in England, as you probably know, when they say Asian, that's what they
mm,
mean. They mean India,
Yeah.
but they also still, unfortunately, use the word Oriental over there for Japanese, Korean,
mm,
Chinese, and it's starting to change a little because it's starting to become, obviously, the world's more connected, and especially with Crazy Rich Asians coming out, and there were British Asian actors in that. It was like they were like, "Oh, should we not be using that word?" And I think even
I
with some of
didn't
Crazy
know
Rich,
it was a
yeah,
bad. It was kind of considered a slur until I moved to the mainland.
yeah,
Uh, and I was like, then, and someone pointed out to me, I think that was in college, said,
mm.
"You- Orientals is rugs and lamps.
Yes, yeah. Well,
You're Asian."
where I read, yeah, where I first learned it was David Henry Wong. I think it was in the,
oh,
because as a former
Oh.
actor, I used to just get plays. I was part of that like fireside library theater where I just get plays to, and read them all and voraciously. And when In Butterfly came out, I think it was in the forward of In Butterfly, or maybe it was in some other article I read that he did, where he talked about the word
Mm.
and what it meant. And again, he goes, it conjures up the idea of servitude,
mm,
bound feet, rugs, lamps. Like you said, objects can be oriental, but a person can't be. And that really stuck with me. And when I
mm,
read that, I was like 18 or 19. When I read, I was like, oh my God, that's so true. Because before I probably said it. I might have even said, yeah, I'm Oriental, or that's Oriental, or whatever. She's Oriental, or he's Oriental. And I'm like,
yeah,
Yeah,
but
I
again,
mean,
it's a retraining our brain thing.
for some of
Yeah.
us, our experience with Asian identity is our own
Hmm.
family, right?
Yeah.
Like maybe like you can grow up in some cases, I know a lot of people who grew up in communities where they were the only Asian person,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And so this type of having these types of books out there, having these types of stories out there, I think expands even if you're the type of person who didn't grow up around surrounded by Asian culture, you can go like, this is like an anchor for me,
mm,
Hmm.
or
yeah.
like, there's a world out there that's where I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For
Oh,
sure. For
well,
sure.
I think if, I mean, we have just scratched the surface of,
Hmm.
of, I mean, let alone Asian comics. I mean,
Woof.
manga. And I mean, there's,
Yeah.
more, yeah, mangaka than, American cartoonists. And
And
then,
obviously, I was joking. Like, yes, of course, we celebrate Canadian Asian. There's
yes,
plenty of
yes.
Canadian
No,
Asian
but I
cartoons.
mean,
So yeah,
that just
plenty of
helps
them.
narrow
Yeah.
it down just a little
Yeah.
bit,
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
So, but obviously there is, people have some stereotypes that are just, they're ignorant. And,
Yeah.
guess what? There's some really great comics and that are available, like Deb just said. And, we've mentioned some of them. I am going to put I'm going to put names and links in the comments so people can find it.
Oh,
But,
it is in the chat.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I know. I just put no, I put in my notes because when you close the chat, the notes go away. But
Whoa.
Oh.
yeah. So just as a bit of a resource. But yeah, guess what? Uh, learn about other people, learn about other cultures, learn about wonderful stories told by great storytellers.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I
So
could I could subscribe to that. I
yeah.
could I could like and subscribe to that.
There you go. Well, don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to comment and let us know how we're doing. I see all the real YouTubers do this thing, so that's why I do it. But so all right. Well, Deb, I know you got to run. So well, this is but the first episode in Comic Beat Insiders Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month celebration,
Hmm.
and
We're
we,
gonna cover some movies. We might cover Minari. We might cover Crazy Rich Asians. We may cover TV shows dealing with it as well. So yeah,
yeah,
lots more to
yeah.
come.
There's like, Jimmy and I just got to sit down and narrow it down what we're going to
Yeah,
talk about because
because
obviously,
there's a lot, obviously.
yeah,
Yeah. So yeah.
yeah.
So
But
it's
Deb,
great.
thank you so much for
Yeah. Thanks for
Oh,
getting in. Yeah. Of
yeah, this is
thanks for
great.
inviting me.
Yeah, no, it's
course.
wonderful. It's always a joy to talk to you, and we'll see you on the road or at least in Zoom.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So until next time, I'm Heidi McDonald at The Beat, comicsbeat.com, the news blog of comics culture. And you can find me on all social media at Comixace, Comixace.
And I'm Jimmy Aquino, the host producer of Comic News Insider, the weekly podcast covering comics, TV, film, and pop culture. We do lots of specials, lots of interviews as well. But you can find me at Jimmy Aquino. That's at JIMMYAQUINO on all the socials.
And I'm Deborah Aoki. I am on Deborah Aoki, DEBAOKI on Twitter, which is kind of a mixed bag. Or you can join me weekly on Manga Splaining, where we
Manga.
talk only about manga.
I'll make sure I
Excellent.
link to that in our
Yeah.
links below as well. So, all right. Until next time, we are Comic Beat Insider.
Bye.
All right.
Bye.